Ibrahim Mothana was an activist in Yemen. He was the co-founder of the Watan party and the Arab Thought Foundation's 2011 ambassador. He's a young man, 24 years old, and he's very active in pointing out what was happening in Yemen. In fact, he wrote a New York Times article very recently, an editorial called "How Drones Help Al-Qaeda." And he explained, drone strikes are causing more and more Yemenis to hate America and join radical militants. They are not driven by ideology, but rather by a sense of revenge and despair. Now, I referenced this op-ed earlier when it first came out, and I thought it was a really interesting point about what drone strikes actually do within a country. Do they help us or are they counterproductive? He talks about that as well. He says, we Yemenis get our first experience with targeted killings under the Obama administration on December 17th of 2009 with a cruise missile strike in Al-Majala, a hamlet in a remote area of southern Yemen. This attack killed 44 people, including 21 women and 14 children, according to Yemeni and international rights groups, including Amnesty International. Now, what's interesting is that the person who reported that in the first place was later imprisoned. He was actually one of the top Yemeni journalists, was later imprisoned by the government of Yemen. And then they were going to let him out. There was going to be a pardon because it's obvious that he's a journalist. He was one of the top journalists. He has nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. He wasn't a terrorist. But President Obama called the leader of Yemen at the time and said, no, put him back in prison. Do not give him a pardon. Okay? So he was not let out at the time. He was actually just recently released. So obviously anyone who reports this stuff was in danger of at least government action in terms of imprisoning them. Now, Ibrahim Mothana also said, quote, I call on the United States to critically reflect on using targeted strikes and existing counterterrorism policy in Yemen and to see that it is insecurity and not security that these are creating in my country, the region, the U.S., and the entire world. So this was not just an effort to help Yemen, but also to help the U.S. to say, you're misunderstanding the situation on the ground. You're creating more enemies. You're driving people into Al-Qaeda's arms. Don't do it. We are terrorized here, and when we see an American helicopter, or in this case, drones above us, and I say helicopter because President Obama famously said before he got into office that when he wanted the rest of the world, when they saw a U.S. helicopter, to think, oh good, the good guys are here. And he's basically saying here, when we see a U.S. vehicle above us, we do not believe the good guys are here. In fact, we're scared out of our minds because oftentimes civilians are killed instead of Al-Qaeda or militants. And as you can see here from the sidebar, Ibrahim Mothana is now dead. We do not know why he died. He was 24 years old. The information regarding his death has not been released at all by the government of Yemen yet. Jeremy Scahill tweeted out, horrified to hear of the sudden death of my friend Ibrahim Mothana, an amazing, tireless activist who never stopped fighting for Yemen. Glenn Greenwald and others have also, of course, sent out similar tweets. So we have lost a real fighter for what is right and pointing out things that are true and things that would help not just Yemen, but us in figuring out what to do. We have no idea how he died, so there's no sense in speculation at this point. But it is sad that we have lost this powerful voice in Yemen.